Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good.
So it was brought to my attention. I'll start by saying, so tonight we're kind of, 2 weeks ago, we kicked off sort of the seeker environmental review process, where you determined that you would nominate yourselves as the lead agency. Tonight, Keith and my goal is to give you an overview mainly of what this environmental review process is, what your role is, what the time frame would be, what's expected of you. But before I do that, I want to go to the first slide. It was brought to my attention that, Keith, are you
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me figure out the controls.
There you go. Brought to my attention that it might be helpful to do a brief refresher on what this project is and why we're doing it. So there's a couple of different reasons. You can see on your screen the slide I've shown many times before that gives a sense of the scope of the roadways that are going to be extended or improved. Starting with the extensions, which are numbers 5 and 6, those are generally designed to improve circulation and access through the entire area, the Northeast area for technology. But specifically number 6, the Bolter Industrial Parkway, is a critical connection for the Fairlife facility. Yes, the facility currently has access to 104, but that is via a at-grade intersection on Basket Road, where trucks would have to turn left or turn right onto or off of 104, fighting with other traffic and signals and opposite turning movements. Connecting to Salt Road gives them a interchange connection to 104, so they'll have an on-ramp, more time to get up to speed. It's a safer condition for this volume of trucks to be getting onto and off of 104 and accessing the site. So that's in general the primary reason for number 6, the Bolter Industrial Parkway extension. Number 5, similarly, Chiota Drive will create additional circulation and access to and through this area, specifically the western part of the campus, which has been slated as a high priority site for redevelopment in the Reimagine Webster BOA nomination study. The other projects, 1, 2, and 3, are rehabilitation or restoration of existing roadways that are within the village boundary but are currently owned by Xerox. The reason that we need to improve these roadways is so that they can be, the roadways need to be dedicated from Xerox to the village to make them a public right-of-way to facilitate subdivision, development, reinvestment on this campus. Access to these properties has to be via a public right-of-way. So that's why they need to be dedicated to the village. The village wants them to be improved in order to take dedication. So that's kind of where this grant comes in. We have funding now to improve the roadways. The village takes on these roadways at a good condition. So in general, that's the purpose of this project. I know it's been a while since we talked about this last April. So I just wanted to give a refresher on that. But the reason I'm here tonight is to talk about environmental review, which is a critical step in this process to make a determination of environmental significance in order to keep the project moving forward. So any project, any physical alteration to the land has to undergo an environmental review, and there has to be one entity, the lead agency, who makes a determination of environmental significance. In this case, we hope that will be you. We'll find that out in early July. But this determines whether the action is likely to have a significant adverse environmental impact, whether additional study is needed. There are 2 potential outcomes. You're deciding between 2 outcomes. One is a negative declaration, where you're saying that the action will not result in significant adverse environmental impact. No further study is needed. We can proceed with the project. The other option is a positive declaration, where the action may result in a significant adverse impact, and then additional study would be required before we could obtain the necessary approvals to actually do the construction. So when you contemplate an environmental review, there are 3 types of actions or 3 classifications of actions that you're considering, and every project would fall into one of these categories. The first is a type 2 action, which is something that has been determined not to have a significant impact. If you can determine that your project is a type 2 action, you don't have to do environmental review, you're done. That is not the case here. For us, we're choosing between an unlisted action, which is something that doesn't fall into a type 1 or a type 2, but could have the potential to have an environmental impact, so you do have to do an environmental review, And then there's a type 1, which is generally larger projects, more likely to have an environmental impact. Both projects require the environmental review process. You can use a shorter form for the unlisted action. You can do either a coordinated with multiple agencies or an uncoordinated single agency review with unlisted. But really the process is the same for both. And in both situations, if you make a positive declaration that there's a possibility of an environmental impact, then you have to do further study. So it's really very similar. In our case, we have a type 1 action. So a type 1 action, in order to determine whether or not that's what your project is, there are a lot of different criteria that you're choosing from. In our case, it's a question of the amount of land that's being physically disturbed. If you are next to or within a park, it's a smaller threshold. If you are not, it's a larger threshold. In our case, we are next to or within a park. So we have to abide by this smaller threshold. We would be over the threshold either way, but because we're near a park and we're altering more than 2.5 acres of land, this is a type 1 action. So that's really what it comes down to. I will say, even if this project was unlisted, we would be following probably the type 1 process, because the only difference is it's a long form, environmental assessment form, and a coordinated review. Because of the extensive list of agencies that are involved in this project, just by nature of the fact that we have the village involved, the county and the state involved, a state funding agency, a federally regulated stream, we would be doing the same process either way. This graphic just gives you a sense of the path that we're on. So we have determined that this action is subject to seeker. It is not a type 2 action, so we do have to go through the environmental review. We are doing a full environmental assessment form that you received a couple weeks ago. Right now, we're in the step where we are informing involved agencies, other entities who could potentially say that they want to make this determination. We have informed them and we are waiting for their responses. And also giving them an opportunity to provide their input, their considerations on the potential environmental impacts. So that's where we are now. By early July, we will have hit our 30-day deadline to determine that this entity can be the lead agency. From there, we will start reviewing criteria and making a determination of significance. That's something that you will do. If you make a negative declaration, we end the process. If we make a positive declaration, then we go through the environmental impact statement process. So that's kind of where we are right now. And then to translate that into the very fun summer that we're going to all be having together. So through today, we have provided lead agency letters to all the involved agencies. We've submitted the environmental assessment form part 1, which describes the nature of the action or the project site. And we're doing this workshop tonight. From here, you'll get a couple of additional pieces of information from us. We'll be submitting supplemental information on part 1 in early July, prior to the July 16th town board meeting. That's the meeting where we expect you'll be able to declare yourself as lead agency. On July 30th, or by July 30th, we expect that you will have part 2 of the environmental assessment form completed by town staff and submitted to you for review. We are planning to do a workshop on August 6th to go through that form in more detail and answer any questions that you might have. By August 13th, we'd have a draft of part 3. I'm going to talk through what 1, 2, and 3 are in a moment, but that would be completed by town staff. And then our goal is really to get to a determination by August 20th. So between now and August 20th, however many times Keith or I or Kostas need to come and make presentations to you, we're happy to do that to give you the information you need to make this decision. And then lastly, this is just an understanding of what these 3 different parts of the environmental assessment form are. So part 1 is what you've already received. That is provided by the sponsor, which is WIDA in this case. That describes the action and the setting. You have a lot of information already. If you need more beyond what we are already planning to provide, you can always request that and we can provide additional information or clarification. Part 2 identifies the potential project impacts, and that is completed by the town. So town staff will prepare that form. And then part 3 is the determination of significance. You categorize the magnitude of the impact and determine whether or not it has an adverse environmental impact. And then I think this is my last slide. I just wanted to give you a brief update on kind of where we are in the process right now. Prior to submitting this form to you, we underwent a lot of both desktop and in-person investigations to look at the character of the project site, any potential elements that would need to be filled out on the form and documented on the form. So what we found out so far is that wetland investigations are complete and there are no identified wetlands on the site. Historic resources have been assessed. We've received a letter from the State Historic Preservation Office confirming that there are no archaeological, historical resources that would be impacted on this site, no rare plants or animals, no critical environmental areas. We are working through preliminary design with the design team right now. We expect over the summer, like during this process, you will have preliminary design to look at. But as we are working through that, we do know and have known since the beginning, there is a stream that runs north-south along Panama on the western side of Panama Road that would need to be crossed for this Chiota Drive extension. So that stream will need to be culverted, so a pipe will need to be run underneath that road so that the stream can continue to flow. We also know that the Chiota Trail, which runs parallel in the east-west direction where the future alignment of Chiota Drive would go, is also something that needs to be considered. And so we're working with our design team to evaluate alignments that can minimize the impacts to that trail. Also working with town parks and Friends of Webster Trails to take their design considerations and make sure that the character of the trail is maintained as this roadway gets designed. So those are the highlights. I'm sure you all have read the form in detail and you have lots of questions. My goal for tonight is if you do have any questions on the form, on the process, on the design or the project status, we can answer those tonight to the best of our ability. If there's something we can't answer, we can go back to the design team. We can come back to a future workshop and talk further. But I just thought tonight would be a good opportunity to kind of start the process.
Thank you, Leanne. And yeah, I plan on having you guys come back quite often as this is a very major project going throughout town and things change really quick and it's hard to keep updated all the time and then keep track of everything. But we'll start down the line on this side. Councilman Wagner.
I mean, I just want to thank you, Keith, Barry, who's watching this at some time, for all your work on this. Like we talked about, this is a very simple, in a way, project. We just talk about it's just roads, but it's infinitely complex with how many moving pieces. So I appreciate your work because there's so much going on. There's pressure to get it done. So I appreciate your help. My biggest thing just is, what's the biggest thing you need from the board to help keep things on track as this goes?
I think it's really just your engagement. My greatest fear is that we get to August 20th and you're not ready to make that decision. So reviewing the information we send you, coming to these workshops with questions, reaching out to us if you have questions. I think that's really important so that we don't get to August 20th and say like, hey, we haven't had enough time to consider this, because we will get you the information you need as quickly as we possibly can, because we want to make sure you do have enough time. But that would be sort of my biggest ask.
All right, so August 20th, next major decision, put it on the calendar. All right, thank you.
Councilwoman Wright.
How does the vote in the village last night or the municipal lines, does that have anything to do with this project?
It doesn't have a material impact on this project. The roadway project can go forward either way. It's not required in order for the roadways to be dedicated or for the grant or anything like that.
And so for the two extension areas, Chiota and Bolter, are those all ironed out now? As far as ownership or
So the
whatever?
Chiota extension is on land that's already owned by the town, so no dedications are needed for that.
Yep.
Bolter, no, we are still working through that with Xerox to define the boundary of the dedication and complete that dedication process.
Do you foresee that impacting the timeline?
I do not. I think they are on board they understand the timeline. They're equally invested in making sure that it moves in a timely fashion. So, yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Those are my only questions.
Mine is just now thinking of it as Councilwoman Wright brought up the road dedications. The school district has a portion of land that we're going to need for this road. When does that dedication need to occur by in order for this project to move forward?
So, Keith, you can speak to this too, but I mean, we are working to have all land acquisitions and dedications, any real estate related matters ironed out in 2026, so that if we are going out, our goal is to go out to bid on this project by the end of 2026. To have all of that ironed out by then is ideal. But I don't know if you want to add to
No,
that.
I would agree. And we are in ongoing conversations with the school district about that and going through the appraisal process and everything to identify the value of the land and what kind of an agreement we can come to finally. But there is I'll call it a memo of understanding that there would be a cooperation between the town and the school district to make this happen. So we'll definitely be working, and they've been good partners with us on this. So I think I feel we'll be successful in the end. And we're not holding up design or anything like that. We're running parallel courses to keep this on an expedited process.
Councilman
Yeah, my
Cahill?
only concern is, I'm sure your concern also is the timeline to get things done, which I'm sure you've already benchmarked and dedicated this. Okay, and August, for example, August 20th, you need to have a decision from us. And I would just say that if there's anything that we can do that is potentially holding you up, please reach out to the board and let us know, because we don't want this project to get behind schedule. So, we're here to help where needed.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Councilman Hunter?
No, I just appreciate the work and the effort that you guys are putting into this. Thank you.
Thank you.